Welcome to the Nerd Tutorial Podcast, a podcast offering discussions and tutorials on nerdy subjects for people who aren't necessarily nerdy themselves. With you today, myself, is your nerdy tutor George, and with me here today, the mistress of gifts, my mom.
Hey, I am the queen of the stocking stuffer.
Oh my goodness, our stockings are the greatest stockings in the world. I would not. I worry when I have to start doing it on my own if I'll ever be able to compare for stockings.
I go out of my way.
Oh, absolutely. So, this week we are talking about gifts. Now, we've done a gift-giving guide beforehand. Mm-hmm. This will be an updated version, and we'll link to the original one as well on our website at the nerdtutorialpodcast.com. So some of this stuff might be repeats of what we did beforehand, and some of this might be new stuff. So
I included four stores that I like that we didn't even talk about last time.
No, and these are stores I think it actually would be really useful for a lot of people. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was party games. Now, admittedly, we're kind of like this weird set of times where, like, being able to, a lot of people will not be spending, Christmas with family members at all.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, they'll be socially distancing. So I wanted to bring up some ideas as far as things you could do.
And we've been known to play games.
Yes, or not just play games, but rather these are games. Some of these are games that you wouldn't want to be with everybody in a room.
Yeah.
Some of these are games you can play online.
Okay.
So the one I want to start with here is actually going to be some games you would probably want to play at home.
Okay.
And the first one I want to recommend is called Cards Against Humanity. Or also, you can also get its slightly toned down version, also known as Apple to Apples.
What is the Exploding Cat one? I remember.
Exploding Cats is another party game as well. I don't have all the rules to Exploding Cats because I've never played it before.
I played it on a train, on the floor of the train in Cambodia.
Yep, that would sound about right. It's like, there's actually a lot of interesting kind of card games where, like, half the fun is watching and seeing what happens. Cards Against Humanity is playfully known as the awful card game for awful people. It is a very much an 18-plus game at the end of the day, meant for adults.
There actually, interesting enough, is a tween version.
Although there's a lot of copycats for it out there. So there's a lot of, like, there's a Star Wars version of it. There's a lot of different Marvel and other fandom versions of it. So you might have, like, Disney, Cards Against Disney, or other variations on the games. And so the initial idea of Cards Against Humanity is that everyone gets what we call black cards, essentially, at the end of the day. And they all have different things on them. And when I say things, I mean usually like sentences, nouns, verbs, short descriptions of stuff. Cards Against Humanity is well known for being, depending on what version you get, can be very random in what you get as far as what's on those cards. Sometimes
it'd actually be an interesting thing for somebody getting ready to take SATs. It is a very good dictionary for adjectives.
Oh yes, it's very good. Absolutely, that thing you can get. So the intention is that everyone starts with 10 black cards. One person becomes the judge, as it were, and they pull a white card and they list off what's on the white card. And so your job as the other players is to figure out a black card that'll go well with the white card. And so once everyone turns in all their one of the black cards that they want to use for that prompt from the white card, the judge will read them back out, and after the judge reads them back out, they get to decide which one they liked the most. And it could be anywhere from the one that was the most cringiest, the one that was the funniest, the one that was the biggest inside joke for some people. And so, and the intention is that whoever had the best card gets to, they get the white card, and at the end of the game, whoever has the most white cards wins. Now, you can have house rules, and you can say, you end up having to have. You end up kind of having to have house rules. And this is a game that works best when you have at least, I think, 5 or more people. It's good. It's a good game
because you pull one out for the judge.
You always pull out one for the judge, and if you had like 4 people, the choices then become just like 3. I think 5 people and more would be the best way for this in a lot of cases. And it's I've had a lot of fun with this game being very random. It's a game they have all the expansion packs for, and they have various expansion packs. So they had like a political expansion pack. They've had
there are a bunch.
food.
And you can combine expansion packs and end up with some pretty interesting. So you could have a political expansion pack,
Mm-hmm.
and there's an expansion pack for fashion wear,
Yes.
and or you could combine the expansion pack for fashion wear, which has references to Louis Vuitton and other things, with a political pack. There's all sorts of combinations for the expansion packs that make the game really interesting.
Oh yeah, and what's nice about this game is that the base game itself is really not more than $25 to $30.
And the expansion packs are like 15.
Yeah, and the different expansion packs, which usually include about another like 30 to 40 cards, typically are about $10 to $15 each.
There's cards against Disney.
There's cards against Disney, yeah, and then there's cards against Star Wars, cards against Harry Potter. There's cards against Game of Thrones. So there's a lot of variations on the different variations to this game. Now, I mentioned apples to apples because it's kind of like I wouldn't call it the childish version of this game, but it's, if you wanted to play this with, elementary and middle schoolers and maybe even just high schoolers, and you didn't want to be raunchy about it, apples to apples is just as good as a version of it, which is a little bit more lighthearted. And I'll just be point blank that again, when they say Cards Against Humanity is a horrible game, is a horrible card game for horrible people, like a lot of the phrases and terms that are in those cards are instinctively like crude, mean.
They invite some
choice again. It's
double entendres and
choice.
Yeah.
Choice of things. There's literally a card that's just poo, and the variations on just that one word.
Yep.
So, again,
and then I'll turn around and I'll say this: it's actually not a bad game for a place in which you don't know very many of the people.
Yeah, it's a great, because again, I mean, like, you don't need to. Laughter, I think, is one of those things that works great with everybody.
Yep.
And I don't think that at the end of the day you can ever go wrong with finding fun ways to laugh, even if you don't use it. I mean, it's one of those games in which I really wish I could bring to work with me and just say, hey, we're just going to play this game for like, we're just going to play like 2 go-rounds here for an hour, and we'll just have fun and we'll get to know each other. And I think it's a great thing. It's a good building element. Now, again, your mileage may vary with the people you work with in this game, but
so it's probably not PC enough for work. Although I agree with you, as a team building thing of just breaking the ice and being real.
Yeah, I think it would be a fun game.
It'd be a fun game. I have played it with several couples where I knew the wife well because I worked with the wife, but I didn't know the husband. And in that particular instance, it worked really well because after a glass of wine,
everyone gets a little tipsy and then a little more
tipsy,
giggly.
But yeah,
giggly.
Yeah, I would say relaxed. I think it's a really good icebreaker game.
Oh, absolutely. Again, before the COVID, there was a quarterly board game night that one of my friends hosted, and I would often go there and not know anybody there for the most part. I could bring this game, though, and everyone thought I was the greatest guy on earth because I brought the game.
Is Rana?
Yes.
Oh, she's so much fun.
Oh, absolutely. And then speaking of board games, the next game I want to recommend here is actually called Betrayal at the House on the Hill. Now, this is an interesting game in which up to 6 players. You want at least 3 to 6 players on it. Everybody takes a placard which has like a little character on it that has some stats on there, and you basically you're like a Scooby-Doo gang going into a house that's procedurally generated. So there are these tiles that have either stairways, libraries, corridors, kitchens, bedrooms. So if you go, so you start in the lot, you start in like the foyer, and then you have the option to go forward, backward, forward, left, right, and then if you go to the right, you put down a tile, and it might be, oh, this is a kitchen that has like 3 different entrances to it, so you can lay it down whatever way you want. But every single time you lay down a tile, you make the house bigger and bigger, and what you basically start doing is you start preceding what they call a haunt. And so you have to roll.
So not like Clue.
Not quite like Clue, no. So what's interesting about this game is that as you build out the house, you have to roll dice, and so the dice will tell you whether you're safe or not from a haunting. And so as you proceed to build out the house, eventually somebody's going to roll, again, based on the number of times it happens, the percentage keeps going up, so you have to get a higher number constantly. So at first you have to, if you roll a 2, you start the haunting at the first time, but after like 8 or 9 times, like you have to keep rolling like a 10 and above to stop the haunting from happening. Once the haunting happens, though, this is where the game starts to get interesting. So that person has to then leave the room temporarily. They have to go into the next room, and they get a booklet that says, based off what number you rolled during the haunting, this is the new way you get to play the game. And so in a lot of cases, you might become a Frankenstein that has to actually catch the other characters and beat them. But the other characters also get a new set of rules as well, and that's how they defeat you. And so those rules might be, we have to find certain keys in a room. We have to find enough keys to open up the last room to turn off the power for the Frankenstein monster, or something along that. So it might be that like you come back and everyone now knows you're the bad guy in some sort of way, and that you have a new way of playing the game that they're also semi-aware of the rules for it as well. You're semi-aware of what their rules are too. So
you end up with maybe like a Laura Croft type character and a.
So like some cases might be like Frankenstein has to haunt people. Other things might be where now your job is to not to get the other people, but to actually get the keys for yourself and defeat them. So now maybe you might. So
nobody knows what anybody else's job is.
They have you get a vague scenario. So you get like a scenario of what's happening, and so you kind of understand what's going on. And so the intention there might be that you might have to eliminate some of the rooms that the bad guy is able to go into, or the good guys are able to go into. And by eliminating those rooms, only you're able to get into those, and they have to roll a certain amount of dice to get out of them, so that way you can go and catch them. So the game changes based off of what the hauntings are and how you go through it. So you can play variations on the same game multiple times without ever actually repeating some of the scenarios. So it's always different.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and so it works out pretty neatly in that sense that one person always gets to kind of be an extra kind of different person in a lot of cases and has special rules, but then other people get to play new rules as well, so the game constantly changes. And there's been expansions packs for this as well, which have also added to the house labyrinthy sort of tiles, but also new hauntings that can happen as well. And so you get the ability to play a singular game at the end of the day that has multiple ways of ending up it playing out at the end of the day. So no two playthroughs are ever going to be the exact same.
And what is that called again?
Betrayal at the House on the Hill.
Okay.
And again, we'll put all the links for things you can get these at online. Because I find it super interesting, because I find board games super interesting, because again, like there's
Mysterium, and there's now one called Pandemic.
Oh yes, I was sure something like that was going to come out.
Yeah, Mysterium is sort of a amnesiac ghost, so he can't he doesn't have his full memory, and he communicates through sort of psychic visions, and you have to put it all together and recreate the story behind the ghost.
Oh, that's interesting. neat. Yeah.
It actually is. So it's
That would be interesting.
yeah, because how people interpret these visions varies from like person to person. So it's pretty cool, and that's Mysterium.
Mysterium.
Mysteerium.
I will add that to the list here.
Yeah.
The next one I wanted to talk about, which is one of my personal favorite games, because I find this is something you could play as an icebreaker in an office.
Okay.
This would be a great way to do it. It's called The Resistance. We've played this once before.
Yes, we have.
So the idea of The Resistance, now there's variations on this game in multiple different ways, but this is the Resistance is the original version, and it's very easy to get. You literally get it for free on your phone.
Yep.
And play it with a group of people. The intention being is that it's some version of the future, and you are a part of a resistance. Everyone is a part of a resistance cell trying to beat the corporation at the end of the day. However, the corporation has sent spies into the resistance to foil their plans. Now, the resistance is supposed to undertake missions that are intended to sabotage and weaken the corporation, but the spies can kind of get in there and mess up the mission so that they fail at the end of the day. So the job of the resistance is to win 3 out of 5 times and get at least 3 missions completed to win the game, versus the spies have to stop at least 3 missions in order for them to win the game. And there's usually always there's always more resistance members than there are spies. But the fun part about this entire game is that nobody knows who the spies are, with the exception of the spies. And so it's a game of
I was a spy one time.
It's a game of trying to figure out who's acting suspicious and who's not acting suspicious, and why they want to go on missions and who doesn't want to go on missions.
Who's overly eager?
Who's overly eager? Who's being quiet this time when we're discussing? So people go on missions. A person decides who gets to go on missions, and if we can't all agree that we go on the mission, then it fails, and then goes to the next person clockwise. And if we go around an entire revolution, that mission just fails in general because we weren't able to choose a group of people to go on it. So it's a lot of game of working with everybody else to convince them that, hey, this is the right way to go, versus convincing them that, like, no, don't go that way, that they're all traitors over there, or that person's a spy. And I've had just the most fun playing this game at the end of the day, because it's simple and it's easy, and if you're with a good group of friends, like, it's very easy to just be able to stand up from the table and like, I know you are a spy. You are always a spy. You are a spy. And what was great about that time was that the 4th time I did that to that person, because she kept being a spy, I was also a spy. So I was able to dissuade. I was able to dissuade people from thinking she was a spy at the end of the day, because I was just being me constantly doing that. And again, the Resistance is a very simple game. You can probably get it out there for like $20 if you want to get a hard version of it, a physical version of it. But I tend to find that it has a lot of pieces to it that don't necessarily make sense, or don't make sense initially until you play it enough times for it to be repeated enough for you to know what the pieces are. And the cell phone version of it, I think, works a lot better. Because you can easily access the nodes on the phone and just kind of pass it around to everybody.
Yeah.
So that works out much better. Also, would probably work really well on like an iPad or a tablet of some sort as well. So, again, that's The Resistance. It's a fun game. Now, if we want to start getting into games in which you don't have to be around other people to play them, because we are in a pandemic and we are trying to be socially distanced. Mm-hmm. The next game I would actually recommend is a game called Among Us, which is kind of in the same vein as The Resistance. Among Us is a super simple game at the end of the day. That's available on PC on Steam. It's about $20, I want to say, for $20. So we would assume that each person has to get it, which could be a little bit of a barrier.
Okay.
But if you just want to have a fun game night at $20 is probably very doable. And so the idea here is that you're on a spaceship that everyone has to perform various tasks on the ship that would be kind of normal in the normal everyday sort of stuff. So you might have to take gas from one place and fill up the engines. You might need to recalibrate the engines. You might need to destroy asteroids. You might need to clear out the air vents, or you might need to download data from one place to another. And all these are very quick and easy little mini game style stuff. So like Simon Says, or rotate the laser to point in the right way, or click on asteroids as they pop up. So none of it is very overly complicated mini games. And the entire idea is the crew is meant to complete all the little mini games for them to be able to survive at the end of the day, for their ship to survive. However, amongst the crew are two. I forget what the term they use are. They might either be invaders or imposters, I think is the correct term. And these imposters have the ability to. Now, mind you, it's a big ship, so nobody can see what other people are doing unless they have line of sight. So you can't look into the next room and see what somebody's doing unless you're at the door and looking into the room. And so these imposters, what they're doing is they are sabotaging the ship. So they might say lights out, and so they might reduce the amount of visibility you can see, or they might have set the self-destruct button and you have to go and stop it. But but these guys, their job is to kill the other members.
So how many people do you need?
You can have up to 10 people in this, and
it's the smallest group you can have.
The smallest group you could probably do it with like 5 or 6 people. It gets to be a lot more fun with a lot more people. So 10 is the max.
Now, do you like say, okay, so we're all going to play this at 8:00?
So yeah, you would all kind of agree to when you want to play it, and then you would log onto the game, and then you can go to a private room to play it in. So you would give out the code to the other people and say, "Oh, hey, this is the room that I'm in," and you would all kind of join the room and you would play it. So the idea is that the interlopers or invaders are meant to go and or sabotagers are meant to go and kill the other players without being seen. And when somebody comes across a body, you can call an emergency meeting. And at that emergency meeting, you have to figure out which one is the spy or the interloper or whatever it is. And so eventually the idea is that you are supposed to figure out who is the bad guy among you, and you use voice chat to do it. So you have a microphone with you as well. And they do offer a voice chat to the people who are playing during that game.
Okay.
So you have to
most of our PCs have microphones.
Yeah. So you have to kind of talk through what's going on. It's like, I saw X, Y, and Z. They were with me the entire time. So you have to kind of convince everybody else that you're not the spy or the bad guy in this case. And so that's kind of the fun. So it's very similar to the Resistance, but in the sense that like you're slowly knocking off people, and the people that get knocked off can't participate in the conversation also. They don't have a say in whether, and so you can't be like, oh, Zach killed me, and stuff like that. But it's been a lot of fun. There's a lot of Twitch personalities that played it. As an example, AOC had a great version of it where she played with Ilhan Omar and other people. So I mean, like it's very topical right now in that particular regard.
And matter of fact, she was using that as they get out the vote.
Yes, during the primaries.
Yeah.
And again, Ilhan Omar and a couple other Democrats were playing with it as well while they were doing it, and we're having a lot of fun doing it.
And that's Among Us.
And that's Among Us, yes.
Among Us.
You'll notice you'll know it because it's got kind of these pill-shaped people with these kind of dome kind of modular eye sort of screens, kind of like a space visor, and just 2 legs walking around. It's a lot of fun. I haven't played it myself, but I've been watching a lot of videos of people playing it, and it is indeed quite a bit of fun, especially with the people you know around you.
That might be fun on New Year's Eve, because on New Year's Eve, I think, because we're still in a pandemic and won't really be able to gather,
Mm-hmm.
and all of us want to be out of 2020.
Oh yeah.
That could be a fun way to.
Now I know they are
By the
looking.
way-
Now it's primarily a PC game right now. I think they're in the process of trying to get it to be
Phone app?
not a phone app necessarily, but something for like a PS4, a Switch kind of thing.
Oh, I could see that working on Switch.
But I believe it does. I think they do have like an Android and iOS version of it as well.
Okay.
So your mileage on that might vary a little bit, but again, I mean it's a lot of fun from everything I've seen for that.
Too cool.
And then speaking of mobile games, the one game I really think would be a great idea for, especially for either large gatherings or,
None of us are having large gatherings.
no, not necessarily large gatherings, but I mean like large
Large
groups of
groups, okay.
people. And the game I would really recommend is called the Jackbox Party Pack. So Jackbox is known for these very simple, easy to play games that's all about your ability to communicate with others. And one of the benefits of this is that you host a game by having just one single monitor up and running, so it could be anybody who's running the game, and you could have that as a stream or a VOD for other people who are watching it. So you could be streaming it to other. So you want to stream it to other people, but other people can also log in to see it as well. And the idea is that throughout these various games, you would write responses to prompts. People get to judge which one's the best response and can vote on that. So, a great example of this might be a family reunion. You can have in some games differ on how many players you can have. I think 8 is the most you can have in most of the games. So, as an example, they have Quiplash, which is on your device on your phone. You're given prompts. You're given usually like 2 prompts per round. Of, this person did blank while they were asleep, and you get to write kind of what the blank in there is, or you might be a really great, a great gym name for a Game of Thrones character or something. And so your idea is you have to kind of put in your response to that, and then you'll go head to head against somebody else. Everyone gets to kind of decide who had the best
The better
response,
answers, yeah.
and the person with the best response wins and gets the most points for that. So the more audience you have, the more you can kind of sway it a little bit. You have slightly better results. You can see what people really like. This is one of those games in which if you had a big group of like 50 to 100 people or more, because it can hold up to like I think almost 1,000 people on there could host it. That a lot of audience participation allows everybody who's watching to continue to enjoy the game without actually having to play it at the end of the day. So, like, if you wanted to, you could have, and I use this as an example.
So you could still participate by voting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So my example for this might be like, say you work at a hotel. In my particular case, as an example, you might have, hey, this is the guy from housekeeping, this is the guy from the front desk, this is the guy from accounting, this is the guy from the reservation team, the sales team, from the maintenance team, stuff like that, and maybe the GM plays as well, and you can vote for these guys' individual responses. There are other games kind of in the same vein. So another game is kind of like a haunted house sort of thing, where like you have to answer trivia questions, and if you don't answer the trivia question correct, you have to play a kind of a death penalty game, where you might die, but you can still participate. Another one is called Break the Internet, where the notion is you have to write prompts for other people based off of what they gave you to begin with. So they might say like, girls, a bad response for Girl Scout cookies, and so they might have a quote, and then that quote gets given to another person who then has to write like a headline for it to make that other person sound really, really horrible or really, really bad. So like your favorite type of Girl Scout cookies, like strawberry and mint, and then the response might be, this person had said that the taste of blood, this person had a drink of blood. It's like, tasted like strawberry and mint. So the idea is to kind of make fun of other people in that particular case. One of their more popular ones is actually, I believe, is fibbage, which is all about you lying or you telling the truth while other people lie about you to make it seem like what was the actual truth. So it might be like, hey, like I've never done blank. And then everyone else's job, and your job is to say what the truth is, and everyone else's job is to write what they think the true answer is, or what would be a funny answer to it, in order for them to steal the points from what is the actual thing. So okay. It's also a really great, just a great party, just an icebreaker game, because it lets you learn about some of these people as a result. And I think in that particular case, it worked great into the corporation, because you could have somebody like, the GM or the head of housekeeping or your managers kind of like take part in that. And again, this is a game that you don't need to all be in the same room for. In fact, you could, a lot of people play it from around the world and watch other people doing it. Uh-huh. Or it's also a great game for like a bar night, even, because you could have people, you could have everyone in there play if they wanted to, and see responses on the screen at a restaurant or a pub or a bar or things like that. So again, the Jackbox Party Pack has a couple different variations on it. So they have 7 different versions of it. Each are about $25 to $30 each, and you can get they give you a little bit of a discount if you buy like multiple packs at once. So they have usually anywhere from 4 to 5 games in each of them. So if you buy one pack, you have 5 or 6 different games you can play at any given time.
That's pretty cool. Yeah,
so there's a lot of games built in there, and this is what I think is one of those great games you can play at with other people all at once. But if you have a person that's a little bit shyer, you can have a lot more anonymity to it at the end of the day. Yeah. But definitely a great game. So the next thing I wanted to talk about. We are in an interesting point in which we have new video game consoles coming out this season.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. So I figured it was important as Christmas presents that somebody might be interested in getting a game console for somebody, or maybe even purchasing one for themselves. So I wanted to take just a brief moment to talk about those because I think it's interesting. And so there's going to be a new PlayStation 5 and a new Xbox. The new PlayStation is the PlayStation 5. It looks like an office building. I mean that in the nicest.
Okay, I gotta look this up.
Yeah, I will have a link of it on the podcast here.
PlayStation 5.
Yeah, so or if you just type in PS5.
Oh, okay.
The front of the building looks like the front of the machine looks like an office building.
Oh my gosh. We've got something designed right now that doesn't look too much unlike that.
Yes, see?
I'm going to Dubai soon, and a lot of things look like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, it kind of looks like an office building, and then the controller now looks like a boomerang.
So it's just sort of streamlined so it doesn't take too much shelf space.
Well, they've always been very narrow, and they've always been very most PlayStation's always been very, very narrow, especially when it was the PlayStation 2, which came out, had the option of laying it down on its belly or on its side, so you could have it kind of in a tower configuration, which I think has always been kind of a smart way of handling it at the end of the day. And other companies have done this as well, like Nintendo's Wii famously had the option to either have it tilted sideways or on its belly as well. But the PlayStation 5 is the new hotness coming out. It's going to have two different variations on it at the end of the day. It's going to have a version that's going to have that's a purely digital version, so it won't allow you to buy the physical games. You have to download them onto the system, which will be a $3.99 version. It'll also have a slightly bigger hard drive to hold those games data in there.
Yeah, it would have to.
And then there's the $4.99 HD Blu-Ray Drive version, which is kind of intended to be able to take the physical media, but also act as a Blu-ray player as well for you.
Okay, so question.
Yes.
If you have the digital version, can you play old games that you already own on it?
So yes. So here's one of the benefits of this is that it is 99% backwards compatible with PlayStation 4 games. So what I imagine what you'd end up doing with the digital version here is that you would have registered these games with your PS4 previously, if you had the physical version of it, and then it would give you the option to download it for the digital version, I would imagine. And now again, I don't own one, and I have never owned a PlayStation before.
But something to look at.
So this is how I imagine it would probably be done, because again, if the intention is that they're backwards compatible, you should be able to download a lot of these games, which in a lot of cases, especially with the PlayStation 4, Xbox, and even the Switch, there's a lot of the games in which you could go out there and buy the physical game for, but you could just easily as download it as well.
Yeah.
The Switch Lite as an example the Switch as an example. I don't actually own a physical copy of Animal Crossing at all. I downloaded it.
Yeah, there's something I don't own the physical. I downloaded. I forget which one it is.
It was
though.
Sonic.
Okay.
Yeah, so it would have been Sonic Mania. And so there's a lot of games that are like that now, where again, if you had registered it and you had purchased it through the PlayStation Network initially, you should be able to re-download it on the PlayStation 5.
So like iTunes, it knows.
Yeah, very similar. Yeah, so you would just take one account and merge it to the next, essentially. Okay. And then so with the PlayStation though, it is going to be a very beefier version of a PlayStation 4. So a lot of your older PS4 games will just play better. So they'll run better, they'll run faster, they'll load quicker, especially maybe in a digital versions where it's not having to read the physical disc to get a lot of that data on there, which is not common as much as you think anymore these days.
Yeah.
I remember video games having a very long load time when you had to put the disc in.
Yeah.
But I actually don't recommend buying a PlayStation 5 right now. If you remember back to our conversation of the killer app, which is the application that's, the
really
app, the
sells
game.
it for you.
Yeah. Like Super Mario was the killer app for the Nintendo. Sonic the Hedgehog was the killer app for the Sega Genesis. Tetris was the killer app that came literally with the Game Boy. It was an awesome game. Most people's first ever experience playing Tetris would have been on the Game Boy initially too. But there's not really any big PlayStation 5 games that are like, oh my goodness, I have to go out and play that. Right now, at least. A lot of the games that are coming out right now for the PS5 are either remasterings of previous games, so like Spider-Man, I forget what the tagline was for it. So there was a Spider-Man game that was really, really good. There's the remastered version, which also includes more characters in it. So there's a remastering of Spider-Man, and there's a lot of the other games that might be new for the system, but they're not. But they're not anything you haven't played beforehand. So it's like Call of Duty, like 5, and I'm making up that number because I don't know, because I think there's more Call of Duties technically. Yeah. But I mean, they're not necessarily any new games that you wouldn't haven't already played before. A lot of them are just the PS5 version of it. Okay. So they'll look nicer and they'll play a little bit better. But if you already own them on the PS4, it's not really going to be.
You're not getting a lot.
You're not going to get a huge thing. You're buying what is essentially at this time an investment, with the notion that like there may not be a lot of them out there right now because of the pandemic. They had to shorten the amount of productivity you would have had in factories, warehouses, building chips and such like that.
But if you didn't want to have a Blu-ray player because you're mostly using Netflix, but this came with one, and that's pretty convenient because then you're getting two things off your shelves.
Yeah, I mean, the PlayStation 4 had a Blu-ray player in it as well.
Did it? Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
I like that idea of combining the technologies.
well, again, and this is what made the PS2 the best-selling game console of all time, was because when it came out originally at the price point of $299, it was also a DVD player.
Yeah.
And so, even if you never used it for video games, you had a DVD player, which at the time was still like a $200 $200 to $250 investment.
And at the time, you were using DVDs a lot.
Yeah.
I have bookshelves of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I still have a lot of DVDs as well, which a lot of my older media and anime and movies are still in a DVD format.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, like it's the simple fact that in Japan, Blu-ray players still cost nearly $300, and the PS2 was a $300 console that happened to also just play video games as well. So it made a really good option at the end of the day for the PlayStation, and they've continued that throughout the years as well. But that's if you get the HD Blu-ray Drive version, so it'll play the HD Blu-ray CDs at the end of the day. But again, so right now, like, I admittedly would not recommend buying it right now because there's not really any sort of killer thing for it. If there was a new God of War or a new Spider-Man or another really big exclusive title that would be coming out sometime between now and Christmas, I might say, or even at the beginning of next year, I might say, buy it now to wait for this new hotness that's going to be coming out.
So you have it.
But right now, right now you buy it with the intention of something really interesting will come out for it eventually. It also works with your PlayStation VR, so if you had PlayStation VR, you can plug it in right away with the PlayStation 5 as well, and so that's an option there too. But again, unless you already have a PlayStation 4 and your PlayStation 4 is literally on its dying breath, as far as because you've overused it or it's broken because you dropped it, I probably wouldn't recommend the PlayStation 5 right now, even as an entry-level sort of element to getting into video games, either for the time being.
Okay.
My opinion that this time next year might very well change because there might be... At one point, I really considered getting a PS4 because of Spider-Man and God of War, because it was really cool narrative games that looked really pretty and had a lot of great gameplay aesthetics for it. But for right now, there's not anything like that on the PS5. The next one here is going to be the Xbox Series X. Now, I don't know what Microsoft's deal is here, but they need to stick with that naming convention and stick with it because they're creating unnecessary market confusion. So the lineage starts with the original Xbox, the Xbox 360, the Xbox One. Okay. Admittedly, I don't play Xbox all that often, so maybe I messed that up a little bit. So let me just double check that real quickly.
Well, someone will come along to correct you.
Oh, I'm sure somebody will. I want to beat myself to the punch as best as I can. So this is the Xbox 360, and then there was the Xbox One, which is kind of the current version out there right now, which is the current one. And now the newest one is going to be the Xbox X Series X. But
seems a little redundant.
It seems, it is. It's I find it to be very silly in that particular notion. But oh no, I was right. So again, it was Xbox 360, then Xbox One, and now the Xbox X Series or Series X and Series S. So there's two versions of the new Xbox that are going to be coming out here soon. And I wanted to touch on this because I thought it was best to not confuse people who are going to get an Xbox.
Okay.
So the new Xbox Series X is supposed to kind of bring in this notion of 4K and 8K gaming, which I think is not... I will tell you right now, do not buy a 4K television. Do not buy a 4K television.
Why?
Do not buy a 4K television. There's nothing that plays 4K stuff right now.
It's not the tech. So the programming isn't there yet.
The programming is so. I will reiterate that and say that there are video games that play in 4K. There are movies that are shown in 4K, and there is even some TV shows shot in 4K. The bulk of that, though, is like only when you really kind of factor into how much of that exists out there, that it's so minimal that it actually doesn't show up at all. So it would be like buying a race car, but only ever driving to and from work.
Oh.
Now, don't get me wrong. You're driving a really, really nice car, and it's really, really fast, and you're able to get to work really quickly, and it's a nice ride while you're getting there. But you're not going anywhere cool. You're not racing anybody. You're not using the car for what it was intended for. And right now, there's just not enough media out there that would warrant a 4K setup at all. There's a lot of games that especially when they were designed, were not designed for a 4K setup. So they were always designed with a 1080 perspective at the end of the day. So while you could get a 4K television or you could get a 4K gaming system, yeah, they exist, but there's not. But again, most people are still kind of aiming for what would be common, which would be that 1080p or 1080i display.
Yeah.
So the lowest common denominator in that respect. And again, I mean, keep in mind, 4K televisions are not new either. 4K televisions have been around since the beginning of 2012, 2013. They've been around. Even up until like 2015 is when they started becoming more prevalent. But in the last 5 years, we haven't had a lot of media that's really been able to take advantage of 4K media, much less anybody who's shooting anything for 4K at all. So I don't recommend it.
Yeah, and if there's no product for it, I mean, it's not like HDTV where the product was coming immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, because HDTVs came out, and there was a limited supply of things that were in HD.
Yeah.
But it caught up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And it became the standard pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, it's just, there's not enough media out there for 4K televisions, I think, right now. And at the end of the day as well, I mean, like, if you've ever watched, I would actually offer to people that watching something in 4K is probably a worse experience.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is that when you watch TV, in a lot of cases, especially something that would take advantage of a 4K television, might be, The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, these big visual spectacles, Marvel movies, like.
I was watching The Lord of the Rings in pieces, actually on election night because I didn't want to watch the returns.
Yeah, me too. I avoided the election night stuff. I literally started a new character and was just trying to avoid the towns because everyone talks about it in town. But yeah, for 4K televisions right now, I just again, when you go back to the media in a lot of cases, you can see a lot of the wires, a lot of the small imperfections that would sometimes bring you out of a movie. And there's a lot of cases in which there is stuff out there that you would see, but that you're not intended to see because it's meant to blur by you so quickly. It's one of the reasons why.
Oh, that's an interesting.
It's one of the reasons why I remember way back in the day in which I first started seeing like these super high definition TVs in which everything moved at like 60 frames a second. I hated the look of it because it felt unnatural. Because again, you would have characters moving in a very distinctive sort of way, but then when it got to more motion heavy, action sort of shots, everything was moving around you and whipping around you and went back to what looked like a 24 frames per second look, and it totally took you out of the picture. It totally took me out of the movie. I mean, I remember watching iRobot in the display at my favorite electronics store. I was watching it and thinking, wow, this looks kind of cool, but it looks really weird as well. The human brain at this point here, we're most attuned to watching something at what we would consider either 12 to 24 frames per second.
Yeah.
And so that means that there's 24 frames that happen over the course of that 1 second. of length of time. That's kind of what our brains are most well programmed for at this case. Like we know how that looks, how that feels. Even something being at like 30 frames a second feels off. And so again, keep in mind, like even for an example, World of Warcraft refreshes at about 70 frames per second, and it looks really, really nice and smooth when I'm playing it.
Yeah.
But it often seems a little too smooth for me.
Okay.
And that can take you out of the game because it doesn't seem natural to what you're normally expecting in that particular case. But to rewind back to the Xbox series, because again, they're also trying to push 8K gaming, which again doesn't exist.
And so I'm curious, why are people pushing things that where there's not content yet?
Because there might eventually be content.
Because there will be, but the price for it will come down when there is content.
Mm-hmm. But again, I mean, in a lot of cases, it's a chicken before the egg problem.
Yeah.
And I find
until you can play it, there won't be content.
Yeah, but there won't be content unless there's enough people out there to warrant the need for the content.
Yeah.
So all it really, really will take at the end of the day is whatever new Showtime, HBO, limited series will come out that they say we are shooting this in 4K, and which everyone's going to want to watch it in 4K.
So you don't miss anything.
So you don't miss anything, and I think it's going to have to be something like that that really pushes that at the end of the day, to get you there. But keep in mind as well that even when it comes to media, like HBO could very well have something in 4K. But if your cable provider can't give you the data in 4K, it won't do you any good. So you have to almost watch it online where you could get the data at 4K, but then you're going to start running into a problem with the amount of bandwidth you use. So, again, a chicken before the egg problem.
Yep.
But going back to the Xbox series here, there's going to be two versions of the Xbox. There's the Xbox X Series X, and then the Xbox Series S, which is meant to be kind of like your iPhone S series. So you know how you have the original. So let's say, for example, you have the iPhone 11. I don't know. Are they on to the 12 yet? I'm pretty sure they might be soon. But you have
I didn't know there was an 11.
Oh, so let's say, for example, you have the iPhone 11. They usually come out with a budget version later on that has a lot of the same technology that is in the iPhone 11, but at a reduced cost, and so a little bit more downgraded.
I have an S.
So you get the S version.
I have an S.
Yeah, and there's nothing. And again, in a lot of cases,
it's perfectly fine.
It's perfectly serviceable. Again, a lot of these cell phones, the S version is a perfectly serviceable version of the phone. It's just with cheaper parts and typically at a lower price point, but also not the most latest and greatest technology that was in the original.
Yeah.
So one of the big things I'm concerned about with the two different versions of the Xbox that they're coming out with is that there are going to be games that are specifically designed to be, is what they're calling it, is optimized, and I use that in heavy air quotes, for the Series X. So they're meant to be played on the Series X because they're going to be...
So they'll be, because they need to have volume in order to support the game, they'll play on something else, but it won't be as good.
Yeah, and so the big example is that the Series XS is going to have like a 512 gigabytes versus the 1 terabyte that the X series is going to have. It has slightly less RAM modules than the other version does. So again, you can play all the same games on it. It'll be perfectly serviceable. But the Series X is going to be the big beefy cousin. It's going to be the big beefy brother. This is the high school quarterback, and you're just in the band. Sort of thing here.
I'm okay in the band.
I'm okay with the band too. But the difference actually kind of works out to be rather interesting though. So the S series, which will be very comparable to the Xbox One as it is right now, is a $299 price point versus the X series is a $499 price point. So that's where the S series might have. The S series is also smaller by comparison too. It's about 60% the size of what the Xbox S series is. It is meant to be more portable as well, so you could take it to friends' houses and set it up at other places as well. I imagine what the Series S will likely be used for will be probably budget computers.
Yeah.
You know, which is not uncommon. I mean, like somebody once clustered about 200 some odd PS3s together to make server racks.
That's cute.
So,
yeah,
it's doable. I mean, I've heard of people who install Linux onto Xboxes before, and PlayStations. So yeah, and it also is going to be backwards compatible with all the games that previously came out for the Xbox One too.
Okay.
So you will have that backwards compatibility. But like the PlayStation 5, I don't recommend it. There's nothing that's specifically coming out for the Xbox One, for the Xbox X Series.
How come? So we're in the middle of a pandemic, and I find it curious that people are introducing products without killer apps to go on them, because we're in the middle of a pandemic when people are stuck at home, binge watching all sorts of crap.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the middle of Queen's Gambit, which isn't crap. It's good, but
okay.
But I'm just saying, people are home, and I mean, Animal Crossing proves that you come up with a product.
It's the number 2 best-selling game for the Switch at nearly 22 million units sold.
Oh, I just planted hollies yesterday, so you have to plant hollies so you can harvest berries, because there's going to be stuff you can make with the berries.
Ooh, okay, I'll start doing that.
That's my understanding. Don't quote me on it.
So your confusion is why is there a killer app that comes out at the same time for these, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have 2 different answers for that. Is that basically Microsoft started developing the Xbox X Series and PlayStation started developing the PlayStation 5 back in 2016. So they've been working at this for like the last 4 years at bare minimum.
And they're delayed for what reason? Or not delayed? This is how long it takes?
This is, typically game consoles can take anywhere from 4 to 5 years to be generated in a lot of cases because of the unique architecture that goes into designing the technology. And also deciding the technology as well that you want to use in it that won't exist right now but will eventually become very easily producible.
What other people might design for?
What other people might design for. Again, a great example of this was that the Wii really did pioneer motion controls.
Yeah.
And PlayStation and Xbox spent 3 years trying to redevelop to reverse engineer the hardware to catch up to Nintendo. And by the time they came out with it, Nintendo was like, yeah, we're not really into motion controls anymore. Now we're into a second screen, and everyone else was like,
well, crap, I just got there.
Yeah, we just got there, and we literally, again, like Xbox spent...
That's like showing up at the wedding and having to go to the reception.
Yeah. Yeah, and so, like, again, Nintendo really showed everybody how it was supposed to be done. Now, mind you, like, the Xbox Kinect, which doesn't require a controller at all, it actually was really, really good at all sorts of other stuff. Like, they used Xbox Kinect systems to do the Hobbit CG, to do the motion cap.
Yeah.
Literally, they did the motion cap, and they did a lot of people still use it to this day to do like virtual idols, which is a weird thing. And so a lot of people still use it for a lot of rigging and face tracking and stuff because those are really, really good. The only thing they weren't really good at was actually playing games. Because by the time they came out, nobody was really planning on them to come out. And there wasn't a lot of support for it because by the time they came out, there was 3 years past when the Wii had already come out.
Yeah.
And if you were really going to... And even the Wii's kind of motion control stuff gimmick had kind of run its course by that point.
It was pretty cool, though.
Oh, it was a lot of fun.
I love bowling.
Oh, I could play tennis and sword swinging and everything. There was a lot of fun there, too. But again, back to the simple point here that like it does take anywhere from 4 to 5 years to develop these game consoles. I mean, the Nintendo Switch, when it came out in 2017, they'd started working on that back in 2014. So they spent 3.5 to 4 years doing it, and actually probably started a little bit earlier because they knew that the Wii U was not doing as well as they had thought it was. They just didn't market the Wii U properly, so that's partly Nintendo's fault. I would have given it a new name or called it the Wii U 2 or something like that.
Yeah.
Because they just didn't market it properly, and I don't think they really even knew what to do with it when they had it. But these companies do take a long time to build these games. And I think right now, which is why you don't, is that there was probably killer apps that were supposed to come out for these systems. And the reason that they didn't was that a game will take anywhere from 2, 3, sometimes 4 years to make.
Yeah.
You know, especially with the way games are now with a lot of HD graphics, and you're going to spend anywhere from 2 to 3 years making this game, and you need to sell hundreds of thousands of copies, millions of copies even, just to ever break even.
Yeah.
And so a lot of these big teams that spend a lot of this time on these games try to pack as much as you can into these games for that $50 to $60 price point. And so that's not always a doable thing at a certain point.
Yep.
And especially in this pandemic here, a lot of people now have to work from home, in which when they work from home, they don't have the same computers that they would have, workstations they would have at work. And so because they don't have the same workstations, they would have access to the catalog of what everyone else is doing with the server access, and they may not be as beefy and strong as their home workstations might be. They don't have the ability to work from home quite so easily. Especially
that's an interesting idea, because then would you take it home? You might take it home.
Well, you may not be allowed to take it home. Again, a lot of these game companies will buy all these different computer rigs, which in a lot of cases, the developer rig might cost $2,000 per unit. So you might loan it to somebody to work from home with it.
Yeah.
But you might have certain parameters that require it to be at work to take advantage of certain server tools, because you don't want to have that out at home, which could get leaked out.
Yeah. I get it. You get security issues, you got all sorts of issues.
A lot of these computers actually don't even are not Wi-Fi enabled either, or internet enabled. They're only allowed to communicate with the servers.
Yeah. With
the intention being that that you're not trying to do other stuff when you're not at work, as it were.
Yeah.
So
I get it.
That's been probably a bit of a barrier. I know a lot of game companies which have had to slow down production. World of Warcraft, as an example, was originally supposed to come out here last week. The new expansion was, and it's now delayed until late November.
Yeah.
They're claiming because they wanted to do more balancing to the end game, which I would appreciate them doing. But I think it's also just really hard to have people in an office in cubicles and offices with a pandemic in which you're not certain how safe it is to be around other people.
I had somebody else who runs a team of developers, and in his case, he's doing cancer research, but with technology, and all. But he said he's more productive, but his staff is less because they can't run in and ask him questions as they're going.
Yeah.
And he says it makes a huge difference on their delivery of end product.
Yeah, I would imagine, and I find that to be in my current job as well, in which I'm constantly communicating with people when I'm far away, and they often don't respond right away because they're already doing something else. So sometimes getting a response might take a couple hours, versus that if I was there in person, I could get an immediate response right away and move on from there.
Yep.
But moving on to, so my big thing with the Xbox here right now is that there's not any killer apps for it, but if you get it, you have a very beefy Xbox machine now that's better than the Xbox One. So if you already had the Xbox One, it's the promised eventuality of more software for it. Which brings us to the Nintendo Switch.
Okay.
And I recommend the Nintendo Switch.
It's still kind of pricey, though.
Well, again, its Switch Lite is $199 and the regular Switch is $299.
Yeah, I have a Switch Lite.
So
I'm dandy with it.
Yeah, and
I'm not using it on a TV.
No, but I mean, I think for you at the end of the day, it probably works well to kind of have it as a little handheld, to be able to put it down. I don't think
I maintain my island while I'm riding a stationary bike in the morning.
Yeah, and I like that element of being able to, sit down and go other places. Like I sometimes just like to sit on my sofa and just have the handheld in my thing here, and I like to be able to bring it with me easily and play it somewhere else, maybe.
Yeah.
I find that again the Switch is already sold is the second best selling Nintendo console of all time right now. It's 68 million units sold. The Wii still kind of it dwarfs it by it has way more sales already, but just because the Wii was such a phenomenon when it came out.
Well, plus the Switch is really a Game Boy Deluxe.
Yeah, it really
that can interact with your TV.
Yeah, it really is like the best. It's because again, keep in mind,
Best of all worlds. Yeah.
Nintendo had literally the market cornered when it came to mobile platforms, mobile gaming in the sense of portable with the Game Boy and the 3DS and the DS. Oh, and a sneeze. I just hate
it. Well, I hate it when they stick in your nose.
Oh yeah, they're just right there hanging, and you're just like, oh, if you would just come out.
Yeah.
So the Nintendo Switch is this merging of both what their home consoles were and what their portable consoles were to make it into one. And I think, in all honesty, like I love the games for the Nintendo because they're colorful, they're bright, they're not the exact same thing all the time. And
and I would tell you that the graphics are astonishingly good.
Yeah.
My girl, her hair moves, her everything
sways with the wind and everything too. Like you get that a lot with an Xbox or a PlayStation too, but you get to a much more gritty realism. And I actually don't enjoy playing gritty, realistic games all that much. I like my games to be, escapism at the end of the day. I like to be able to think, like, I'm escaping into a world. I don't need to come back for a while. It's okay if everything's super bright and colorful. I don't need everything to be gritty and realistic at all.
Yeah.
There's certain fantasy elements that, I think a lot more games could take advantage of that would look really cool, but...
Yeah.
So so at the end of the day, I would definitely recommend a Nintendo because I think it's easy to get into. It has a wealth of a library of games that are. It's done a really good job of courting the indie markets as well. So
seems to be a lot of support for it.
Mm-hmm. My only thing I'll say for this is that a lot of people is that if somebody was interested in getting a Switch, they would probably already have one right now. Is the only barrier I think to that. So I know a lot of people who do already have Switches, but if you want to get somebody else into a Switch or you want to give them an easy access point, I think a Nintendo Switch is a good way to start. I highly recommend the Lite version. Again, it's the smaller portable version that's, again, only $199 by comparison to all the other systems, which start at $499 as well for their base units versus their economy units are $299 and $399. Nintendo's base unit is $299 and its budget version is $199. It's really, I tend to find Nintendo just have done a much better job in this.
Yeah.
And then if you wanted to suck around to the killer app that came out when the Switch came out, they purposely delayed. They planned for a game. Oh, they always plan for games to come out. Nintendo does with their system, purposely so they have a killer app.
Yeah.
And so, when they came out with Zelda Breath of the Wild, that was the killer app for the Nintendo. There were other launch titles that came out that Nintendo really made a point of doing. That's one of the other things. Sony and Microsoft have internal development teams for their consoles, but they tend not to really utilize them all that well. They tend to, what's the right way of describing it here? They tend to, because again, their games tend to focus a lot more realism and a lot more breathtaking spectacle instead of in a lot of gameplay and simplicity in their gameplay. And it's, even Nintendo does this as well too. But I tend to find that a lot of the Microsoft and Sony's in-house development for games, it's kind of a secondary means versus for Nintendo, it's their primary means because their games really do sell on their first-party titles versus PlayStation and Xbox primarily sell on their third-party titles. They're titles that come from your Electronic Arts, your Project Reds, your Naughty Dogs, your other game companies that support them versus Nintendo's games. Most people tend to buy them because you'll never get another Mario anywhere else, and Mario's only made by Nintendo for Nintendo.
Yeah.
Although you can play them on your iPhone and Android, which I think is sacrilege, but...
Hey.
I know. So, moving on from gift giving guides, I wanted to circle around to Etsy.
Oh.
Because so there is a lot of nerdy things that you would be surprised that are on Etsy that you wouldn't think were there at all beforehand.
Well, okay, so if you're doing cosplay.
Oh yes, cosplay.
Cosplay on Etsy. Princess Peach, I got her crown. It's perfect. Somebody with a digital printer. Her crown, her earrings, and her pin. Again, perfect replicas.
And you could. And now, what's even greater about that is that if you really wanted to dive deep into Etsy, if you wanted to get somebody to make the costume, they could make it not only to your exact proportions, but the various different versions of the Princess Peach costume. So you could have a version that was more cartoony, that was more reminiscent of the games, or you might be able to get one that was a little bit more layered with a lot more like frill to it. That's more reminiscent of the Smash Brother games, or you can get like I think there's like a $1,200 version that's an actual ball gown. That's like all tooled out and everything.
I bet.
So, and that's what I found really interesting about Etsy is that you could go on there and you can find this kind of stuff and people who make it. At worst, what I find best of there as well is you can also find instructions on how to make stuff.
So here's the thing, Etsy is a maker's delight. From two different standpoints. I bought leather on Etsy yesterday, so I could salvage something of one of your brothers,
okay,
and remake it for them.
Mm-hmm.
And if I need supplies, beading supplies, special threads, yarn, those sorts of things, and patterns, knitting patterns, crochet patterns, sewing patterns that are custom made and self-designed, or even vintage patterns that from the 50s and 60s.
Mm-hmm.
They're out there on Etsy. So Etsy is a combination of things. There is some used merchandise. It does it has a definite overlap with eBay.
Yes.
Although it has a very different flavor to it.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of things on Etsy you won't find on eBay. Lots of things on eBay you won't find on Etsy. But there are lots of sellers that are on both. Oh
yeah. Well, I think especially if you're a maker, it's worth your while to be on both platforms at the end of the day.
Yep.
Just because more visibility, and mind you, like I've shopped on Amazon before, and seen people who sold stuff on Etsy on Amazon as well, like the exact same items on there too. So it's not but
I will say I'm a seller on Etsy as well.
Mm-hmm.
I make bike bento bags. I am Bike Bento Babe. Bike Bento Babe. I always forget Bento Bike Babe. It's Bike Bento Babe. And I make laminated bike
pouches for your bike.
Yeah. And handlebar bags for walkers too. It's a very popular item. Anyway, and you know a lot of the supplies I need are on Etsy. So it is from both
vantage points.
A tremendous place. You can find, you know, I like eBay better for finding used
items or items
used Green Power Rangers.
Or I like eBay because if I wanted to find something that I know was probably discontinued, it's probably going to be there on eBay. If I wanted to find something that I can't find in the store, my next place is to go to eBay to look for it. But if I wanted to find something that I knew somebody would either have to make or would need to make at a certain point, I'd probably go look on Etsy.
I am wearing a face mask lanyard that I found on Etsy.
Nice.
Okay, so it's got two clips on it, and it clips onto your face mask, so you can hang it like a pair of sunglasses. So that when because you take them on and off.
Do you really take them on and off though?
The masks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if I'm in a restaurant and I'm eating, I don't want to put it on the table.
Okay, that's fair.
So this is easier. Or if I'm the big one is if I'm hiking, I don't want to be taking it in and out of my pocket.
Yes, because we're getting crumpled or forget it.
Yeah, or it falls out of my pocket.
I walked into a store the grocery store here at some point this week, And like I walked in, I walked in a couple paces, and I looked around and was like, oh crap, I forgot my mask. I went back out to my car and grabbed it and put it back on before I came back in. I was just like horrified at myself. I was like, no, you're better than this. What were you doing?
Well, see, now if you've left the house with this hung around your neck, then you wouldn't forget your mask. It'd be right there.
That's very true.
Yeah. So, but my point here is there's things you didn't even know you wanted.
Oh, so I've really been into a game called Arknights here recently, which is admittingly a gacha game for 2D waifus. Mm-hmm. And admittingly, I'm not a very good player at it, but like it's one of those games that has these instantly, immediately sort of cosplay options there. There's so many varied characters that like it's a cosplayer's delight to want to look at some of these characters, and a lot of the characters have this kind of semi-urban sort of look to them, because it's kind of set in a post-apocalyptic future version of the future that's not too far away from ours. So there's a lot of like slouches and kind of sling jackets and trench coats sort of things with a lot of belts.
So if
and
you
buckles.
wanted to go on eBay or on Etsy and type in steampunk,
oh yeah,
it would give you much better return results
than eBay. Oh yeah, and again, I mean, you could even simplify it down to like, I want a steampunk hat, or I want a steampunk goggles.
Well, and you have a choice, and you have choices on Etsy as well. You can choose that something's handmade.
Yes.
You have filters, so you can filter between supplies, finished product. There's like 3 big filters.
Well, a lot of
and then you can further filter to handmade.
Yeah, and then there's a lot of sellers who also will sell you, if you, for example, if you want to get your Princess Peach gown, some people might sell you, oh, do you just want the raw files for it? Do you want an actual item that's unpainted, or do you want a version that is fully painted? Do you want one that has all the glitter and fancy finishings to it as well?
Different levels. And it'll be the same seller.
Yeah.
Years ago, because I do the AIDS ride,
mm-hmm.
and there's Red Dress Day. And years ago, I found somebody who made lycra clothing. I don't know how best to describe that. And sent them a note and said, "This is what I'm trying to do. I need this outfit for this person," because April got a jumpsuit,
mm-hmm.
a
lycra jumpsuit,
a glitter lycra jumpsuit in red.
Oof.
And then, so I got that for April, and then I made her a shiny pleather work apron to go over it. April's a bike mechanic, for Red Dress Day, and then I had her make me a pair of leggings and a shirt so I could go as a dragon. So they had glitter red scales.
Ooh.
And then I bought some extra fabric from her so I could make a helmet cover that had spikes on it. I went as a dragon.
So that's one of the things I did want to talk about when it comes to Etsy, is that if you find somebody on Etsy that you like their stuff, but they're not selling something that you really kind of want, that you're not seeing anywhere else, you can communicate with the maker to ask for custom stuff. So you can have custom orders, and in a lot of cases, a lot of people, so long as it's within their wheelhouse, are actually very interested in branching out and having somebody who would be ordering something like this. So that would give you a reason to add new tools to your kit or have new designs that you can put up there. And especially if one person was looking for it, who's to say 20 other people may have not been looking for it either, or variations on it.
The story of the handlebar bag for a walker.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody reached out to me and said, "I see that you have handlebar bags for bikes. I want something for my mother's walker. Is this and I really like this print that you have. Could you do this?"
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Sure, send me the dimensions of the walker." So from there, everybody in the retirement center that this woman was in, for weeks afterwards, I was getting all these orders for handlebar bags for walkers from all these people who lived in the same retirement resort. I was sending them all to the same address, just different units, and everything. But I got a kick out of it because all my proceeds go to my AIDS ride.
Yeah, and so
it's super.
Yeah, and again, that's an avenue that you may have not had originally. That it's because somebody reached out to you. Now you have a brand new thing you can sell in there.
Yeah.
That probably sells like gangbusters once one person sees it in an area.
Exactly.
So what I will say to this though is that do a little bit of research on the person when you're asking for stuff, because there are some people that are very popular and may not be able to do a custom order. But also try to stay within their wheelhouse. So, like, an example, if you see somebody who does a really good job at making, like, cosplay boots, don't ask them for, like, they may not be able to do other stuff beyond shoes. Like, they might,
shoes are their thing.
The shoes are their thing. They may not be able to do coats or jackets or shirts or something like that. And another great example, if somebody's just, I looked up kimonos and Japanese wear for a while, and eventually found somebody on Etsy that does like kimonos based off of popular franchises. They're usually kind of like short kimonos that kind of got like a little bit of a little skirt and long sleeves, but they're all but they're done in a way that they resemble. Oh, this looks like Sailor Moon, or this looks like a Power Ranger, or stuff like that.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, they're very cute and everything. But I wouldn't go and ask them to go make me, like, pants at the end of the day. Like, it's not in their wheelhouse. It's not what they're typically known for.
Well, and the other interesting thing on Etsy is you get a lot of international people where their pricing, and I don't, I have mixed feelings about this. You have a lot of international people, especially from Ukraine. I run into a lot of Ukrainian and Russian and makers that are very skilled, and very inexpensive because their cost of labor
is very low.
And I have mixed feelings about that because I don't want to be taking advantage of anybody.
Agreed.
But on the flip side, it may be something I couldn't afford if I were to do it another way.
Mm-hmm. No, I think there's I think there is a bit of knowledge that goes into there. Again, like my Wookiee puppet, which I've gotten, was made by a guy in England.
Oh, very cool.
Which I thought was very, very cool at the end of the day. Yeah. So I have a Harrison Ford as Han Solo cosplay, and I carry the Wookiee with me.
Oh, that's very cool.
So it's very cute, and it kind of a little Muppety looking, but like you immediately you still get you understand immediately what's going on when you see it.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of fun to work with. And again, I got that on Etsy. And when I asked the guy, I was like, "Hey, like, I plan to go to a con with this. Can you reinforce it a little bit, or can you make it so my arm can go in a little more easier?" What he did was he made the legs detachable.
Oh, very cool.
So the legs kind of hang out from now. The way you hold them is uncomfortable because it's a straight shot up to his head versus a normal puppy. You kind of go from their back up, so it's kind of more natural, diagonal sort of incline sort of thing. So this one is your arm straight up the entire time, which is uncomfortable. But the legs detach, so when I go to travel with him, I just stuff the legs up his body where my arm would go in, and it's very easy it's a lot less to maneuver around versus my other puppets. I kind of got to maneuver the legs around a little bit to put them in the right place.
I found somebody on Etsy who I did a whole custom leather kit for my travel group, which is 16 women. And it's got it's something to organize all your cables and wires in a little pouch, and then it's got a leather passport cover and a leather luggage tag, and there's one other piece. It's a little pouch. And I found a guy who would do it and emboss it with our little travel logo and the whole 9 yards, very reasonably.
Oh yeah, those pouches, the pouches that when we went to Japan, I still use those for cable management.
Same one, okay, same guy.
Yeah, no, yeah, I love those for cable management. Just take it in my bag, unzip it, and all my cables are kind of in there, and then I can put it all in the pouch, and they stay.
It's organized,
Stay all organized in there. They're not getting anywhere. They're typically not getting befuddled with other cables. So
that actually is a really nice. That was a really nice find.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, you might also find somebody on Etsy that primarily focuses on a brand in some cases. So somebody might be really focused on Super Mario Brothers, like as an example, like somebody might be really good at making Super Mario Brothers cosplay and stuff like that, or their stuff might be in that particular area.
Yeah,
they may not want to do something, where it's like from a PG-13 anime series that's a little bit more risque and stuff like that. Like that's not that they might say, well, that's not really something I would be good at.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. The other idea I had here for this year, because of being distant, are loot boxes.
Explain.
Okay, so a loot box is a monthly subscription service.
Oh, I do know about this.
Yeah, so you have one for my nieces, which is the sciencey sort of stuff.
Kiwi.
Yeah, so Kiwi, but they have other nerdy versions of this as well. So Loot Box, Loot Crate is the big one for nerdy stuff in a lot of cases, and they have their traditional Loot Crate box,
Right.
which has various nerdy stuff in there. But they have ones that are also tailored for like Marvel, Harry Potter, WWE, Pixar, anime, Rick and Morty. Like I've even found ones that are meant more for Legos and comic books.
So for those of you who aren't nerds, this would be like Cosbox or FitFab boxes.
Yeah,
those are the hot women's versions.
So what it is, it's a box that you get in the mail, and it typically comes with an assortment of different items in there.
And sometimes you have a choice between several items. That if you have a preferred membership, because there can be levels of membership.
Yes, so like. You can have different levels of membership, so you might have more items in there or less items in there. And in a lot of cases, even if they're items you don't particularly care for, in a lot of cases, they end up doing pretty well on eBay right away.
Or regift.
Or regift them to somebody else.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking of getting the Tokyo Treat Box for my nieces.
Yep.
Because I think that'd be kind of a cool thing to get weird Japanese confectionaries.
Yep.
Directly from Japan,
and they're pretty game.
Yeah, and again, I bet it would be kind of a fun thing to do once a month. The only thing I will say about loot boxes here, which there are a lot of them, and I'll post a couple links on our website, is that it is a monthly subscription service.
A lot of them are only 4 times a month,
or 4 times a year.
I mean, 4 times a year.
Yeah,
yeah.
Sometimes they're 4 times a year.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're monthly. It can be, again, like when I was looking
30,
at
40, 50.
30, 40, they've Loot Box as an example, or Loot Crate, their standard box starts at $25 a month.
Yeah.
And the more months you get ahead of time, that you pay less for it.
Yeah.
So like if you were to do like an entire year, they wouldn't be $25 a month, they'd probably be more like $21 or $22 a month at the end of the year.
Well, can we talk about different kinds of subscriptions?
Yes.
Okay. So I gave your father a subscription to Spotify, and he said, "Oh, I'll never use this. It's kind of wasteful. I don't know how I'll use this."
He uses it all the time.
He uses it all the time.
Oh yeah.
We've got it on Google. We've got Google Home, and first thing he does when he wakes up in the morning is, "Hey Google, play
something."
Yeah.
And Google's pretty smart about that, I will admit.
Yeah.
But again, it's all available on Spotify.
It's all available on Spotify. And you have to have the Spotify servers to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So he, in turn, gave me the subscription to XFM for my car.
Yes.
For satellite radio on my car, which we love and again, use all the time. Other subscriptions that I think can be really useful, Crunchyroll,
Netflix.
And the option you have is, rather than buying it monthly, you can pay one fee, and you have the option to make it non-renewable.
Yes.
And you can pay one fee for the year.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so there are a number of subscriptions available
mm-hmm.
that are just awesome.
Oh yeah, Wondery is a great one I would recommend, because Wondery does a lot more kind of National Geographic sort of style podcasts in a lot of cases.
Mm-hmm.
As a subscription to something like Audible would probably be very good as well for somebody who likes books.
I love Audible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Again, for nerdy people, I would probably recommend like Crunchyroll, or maybe even a subscription to Funimation's streaming service, or
because it's a nice different gift
mm-hmm.
That they'll get to enjoy every day.
Well, not only something that they'll get to enjoy every single day, but it also might just be a lifting of a slight burden on some people.
Yeah.
Especially in kind of these weird times where lot of people are out of work. Somebody paying for Netflix when you don't have a job, that's something that just kind of helps you get through the day. Might be really useful at the end of the day. I know during
especially if you've got kids home.
Oh yeah, I know during quarantine for the couple months before I found a new job, I was literally not doing anything most days except watching anime and playing video games, which admittedly I wish I wasn't. I wish I couldn't have to admit that.
Yeah.
But I was able to get a subscription to Funimation for a while, and watched a whole back catalog of stuff I really wanted to watch.
Yeah.
And then stopped the subscription after I found a job because I didn't have time to go and watch them anymore.
Well, so I think it's a nice, fun, kind of different gift.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's useful too, especially if you have a person who, again, if you have somebody who has a PlayStation, Xbox, or a Nintendo, like getting them that subscription for those, because again, those are monthly services to be able to access the online content for those consoles. Would be useful. I mean, much the same way if somebody got me, if somebody got World of Warcraft time or various time for other games, that's a very useful thing too. And I also just don't underestimate the power of a gift card. A gift card to some places is a lot of freedom to get something that somebody would really want. Again, especially if you know somebody who goes to a store or a shop frequently. Like I, for a lot of time, would gift cards to makeup stores for some of my female employees that I worked with, because I knew, I knew like a $20 gift card may not only buy like one or two things from this makeup store because it's Sephora, right?
Yeah, Sephora, and it's younger, less expensive sister Ulta. And here's an interesting thing about that is I run a gift card program that takes care of usually 110 teens this year. Unfortunately, we're only doing 80, but teens in foster care and group home, and some of them are emancipated. And this year we have 49 girls and 31 guys. And the Ulta card, we give them 2 gift cards, $25 gift cards, one for food and one for merchandise that they can purchase.
Yep.
And Ulta is I've got over half those girls have requested Ulta cards.
Yeah. And again, I especially like it because especially if you know somebody who's somewhere where they shop frequently enough, or that it would be a nice way, that I find it's a great way to be like, I don't know what you really want, but I know where you want to go spend some money at anyway, so here's a gift card here.
Yeah.
So I find that to be exceptionally useful in those particular cases.
Yep.
So gift cards, again, I never want to underestimate gift cards. Now, you had sent me some links to some websites that you've been using for a number of years here.
Yes.
And I was able to go onto some of these websites that I thought these are some really good websites.
Yeah. You can. I will say you can find anything on eBay. I mean, there are lots of times when I'm looking for small things to stick in stocking. I am the queen of stockings.
Oh yes.
Really, seriously. To me, that's the most fun on Christmas morning, and I've been known to stick, like $100 worth of stuff in a stocking. That's just not uncommon for me. Mm-hmm. But and a fair amount of that is eBay. But the 4 links I gave you are stores that I've gone to any number of times for cute, quirky, different things, like the thumb drives.
Oh yes,
you guys have flash drives that are actual thumbs. And for the women, I painted.
You painted the nails on them.
The nails on them. And those came from one of the sites I gave you. Those came from Lunchbox.
So the first one that you sent me was a website called 835.
You're getting something from 835 this year.
And so I went on there, looking on there. It has some good licensed brands, and I would recommend their Disney and Marvel/DC series because they have some really cool statues on there.
Yeah,
it's some really kind of cool statuesque sort of stuff on there, and they've got both like realistic proportions and kind of cartoony proportions as well.
Choice.
So there's a couple different cool options on there. And there's a couple on there from a number of different sellers that I know make really quality material there as well. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was a really good website. Some of their other areas, though, I found to be a little limiting, and I think this is true of some of the other websites too, that have They have a very small collection of licensed material.
Yeah.
So if you were looking for all things Harry Potter, you would find some stuff here, but you wouldn't find everything you really wanted.
No, but
or you wouldn't find the greatest collection of it, but it'd be a good starting point to see.
But if you're looking for ideas, it's a decent little place for
Oh,
ideas.
absolutely, absolutely.
And it's 8 spelled out, and then the number 3, and then 5 spelled out.
Mm-hmm. And again, we'll put a link on the website here
Okay.
because we'll links for a lot of this stuff.
Okay.
The other one that you sent me was "This Is Why I'm Broke."
I love the name. If nothing else, then for the name, this is why
the
I'm
name
broke.
is perfect, and this one I like. This is one I think I like the most.
Yeah, this is one of my faves.
Because even just the webpage that I started on had just aisles and aisles of items and like
Weird stuff.
well, and what was great about it too is that it wasn't just is that a lot of the links were were sending you off to other places. So
Yep.
it was sending me to things on Amazon and Etsy. Like I saw on there was a Snorlax cosplay patterns, and I was just like, "Oh, that's awesome looking." And there was other small stuff there, but it also had the Snorlax. I know the giant Snorlax cushion, which is like a $300 cushion. I know of.
Yeah.
And a couple of the other things was like, yeah, these are nerdy stuff. These are totally nerdy things.
I love This Is Why I'm Broke.
Oh yeah, and I liked it because of just the sheer amount of stuff that was on there too, and it was
It's weird stuff. It's not particularly well organized. Would be my complaint.
yes, that was one of the things that it really did feel like it really did feel like I found this, here's a link, and I found this, here's a link almost.
This was my favorite.
Oh, the dice. Yes, I've seen dice. I've seen those.
You
dice.
see, that's not new.
It's not necessarily new, but
If you had somebody who plays Magic the Gathering,
Magic the Gathering,
they
Dungeons
have
and Dragons.
What is that? A 20-sided dice?
It's a D20 where the one says F is basically F.
Yep.
FUCK, but it
Yep.
just says F.
Yep.
And there's another one where the 20 says yeah. So those are something I've seen more recently in the last couple months. But no, it's a great website. It's my fear is that going on there is that I'll find stuff I want, and this will be why I'm broke. Literally,
This is why I'm broke.
Yeah,
It's literally what it's called. This is why I'm broke.
and it's
.com.
not and it's not wrong. And I love the fact that they're pulling from so many different sources at the end of the day.
So it's not really its own website. It's a referral to other websites.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really well done because he's curated some marvelous things.
Oh yes, and I love and the variety of it is what I think is probably the most intriguing as well. Because again, there was a Millennium Falcon barbecue pit with the Millennium Falcon on fire with a grill for its top saucer section. And I was just kind of like, yeah, I could see this. This would make sense to me.
Yep.
So I like This Is Why I'm Broke very much at the end of the day.
It's a fave of mine.
The next one you recommended to me was Geek Store.
Yep.
So this has a lot of licensed brands on it here. Probably the most of all these.
If you were looking for Funko, you
yeah, this would be the place you would look for Funko. They were selling a lot of licensed stuff here. But even though they're selling a lot of licensed stuff, they're not selling a lot of it. And a lot of the stuff that's on here as well is the official versions of stuff.
Yeah.
So this is the official version of the Funko version of the Funko characters. This is the official version of whatever statues are from, like Star Wars.
If you were concerned about
the legitimacy of what you were buying,
yes,
this would be the official place to get it. Where like 835 had a good collection of stuff. They're done by other studios that make
knockoffs.
Well, no, not necessarily knockoff. No, I wouldn't call them knockoffs necessarily. But 835 has a lot of. We've licensed, Superman, so we can make this cool statue of Superman.
Yeah.
So it's licensed. It's the licensed characters, but done by other studios. Versus Geek Store has a lot of the stuff that's like, we as the licensee went out and found these people to make the official. Boku no Piku.
This is the one
shirt.
we endorse.
Yeah, the official Boku no Hero T-shirt, or the official Boku.
I find it has. If I couldn't find it other places, I could find it there.
Yeah, I think this is also a good starting point as well to see kind of what is out there as well.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of good official stuff at the end of the day, which is what I kind of appreciate. And then the next one, which I also liked quite a bit too, it's probably my second favorite too. Why this is why I'm broke would be Book Lunch or Box Lunch.
Box Lunch. Box Lunch is an awesome site. I've used that this Christmas too.
I like it because it's got more for its variety of stuff too. I think it's much more curated at the end of the day. I think they did a much better job of curating stuff on here. So if you wanted to find pulp culture related stuff or stuff for him or her, it's much better curated with a lot more quantity of items there as well.
Well, and Box Lunch has actually some nerd stuff that isn't brand named. It's where I get the soap that says, yeah, I've several times gotten the two-sided soap that says face butt.
Yeah. Well, again, they have some of the licensed. Again, their licensed stuff is a very good mixture of various licensed stuff at the end of the day. And a lot of it's not the official licensee sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But like if you were looking for a Naruto sweater, you could find a Naruto sweater here. But I liked that you could go to like the men's section or the women's section, and you had a literal like variety of different stuff that was there, from t-shirts, shorts.
If you were looking generically, if I were looking generically for what's a fun thing I could put in a stocking for a guy, I could go to men and get a real fun selection of stuff that I could choose from. Some ideas, some good ideas.
And that's what I really liked about this too, because you had a lot of variety to the stuff that they have there, without it ever feeling like a repeat or kind of like limiting on certain stuff.
Yeah.
Now, the harder you look, you'll definitely find stuff that it's not as varied as other stuff is. But yep. I do like the fact that its collection of stuff is not insubstantial at the end of the day. I mean, like if you wanted to look for Animal Crossing stuff here, like by comparison to like Geek Store had maybe like a dozen, maybe had like 5 items from there, and then 835 also maybe had about maybe like a dozen or so. Like Animal Crossing Box Lunch has nearly over 250 some odd items here, ranging from on just Animal Crossing alone.
Yeah.
So it has a much better variety at the end of the day that I really appreciate.
Yeah.
And a lot more items.
Those are 4 go-to shops that I've used for years and years.
If you wanted to find nerdy stuff for people.
Because I have nerds.
Oh, yes.
I have 3, like, deep nerds.
You try.
So, all good at math. So those are stores I've used repeatedly and had good results with.
Oh yes, and I kind of don't want to have them bookmarked for myself because I'm afraid I'll just go onto them frequently and I will find myself wondering, how do I pay for rent this month?
Yeah, well this is why I'm broke.
Oh yes, that website especially needs to not be on my bookmark bar.
He's fun because he changes it all the time.
Oh yeah, no. Again, he looks like he has quite a bit of fun scouring the internet for whatever weird stuff is out there, and I'm sure other people.
He has a flash drive that's a tentacle that when you plug it in goes swirling around.
It wiggles around.
Yeah.
Oh, I want that so badly now.
Yeah.
That would be really cool especially just to have that kind of plugged in at work, just to watch people kind of freak out a little bit.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, it'd be great fun. Yeah. So that's when I use a lot. Lunchbox. I mean, all 4 of those are ones I use quite a bit for shopping because I'm always looking for the unique and unexpected.
Oh, I love the unique and unexpected.
I'm always looking for the screaming flying monkey.
We have quite a number of screaming flying monkeys.
Yep.
But also as a nerd, the last takeaway I'll take from I will mention here is that don't underestimate the desire to show stuff off. Nerds love to show off the things that they've been collected over the years. I have the unique benefit of whenever we do the podcast that I stare at my wall of various items that I've collected over the years and think to myself, it's like, I have a lot of stuff I've collected over the years, and then I look at it again, it's like, but I have fond memories of each one of these items too.
Yep.
So I mean, like, I can look at my Gundam model that I got last year for Christmas and think, this looks really cool right there, and that's a really great series. And then I can look at like some of the other stuff on there and think like that's been with me for like 20 years now. That's pretty cool.
So my caveat would be, know you're a nerd.
Yes.
Because I have nerds that like wrestling, and if I can get a vintage wrestling figure, that's like a hot thing.
Oh yeah.
And then I have other nerds who like anime, and I remember searching for a particular anime CD of music one year for you.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
That I got it, and I was just like ecstatic when I got it because it was like I love that band. It was,
you mentioned them once.
I mentioned them once, and I was surprised that you had heard me mention it.
I listened,
and then I got the CD, and I was in. To this day, it's the only CD that's ever in my car at any given time.
So here's my thing. Is I have another nerd who every year at Halloween, if I went on his university's webpage on Facebook, I would see him because he'd be full on. He has like the best Green Ranger costume I've ever seen, and he'd be full on campus in the Green Ranger.
Just kind of hanging out, just doing his thing.
The other fun one would be sometime during finals, he'd wear his Christmas suit. He has
he's a plaid checkered.
It's got Christmas trees on it. It's actually not plaid. It's Christmas trees all over it.
It's actually Christmas trees.
It's actually Christmas trees, and he has a green
vest. Why
vest.
does he wear it to finals?
He wears it to finals just to lighten up the mood for everybody. He actually walked into one of his lecture halls to take his final exam, and as he walked in, the teacher said, "You just got 10 bonus points for wearing that." And ever after that, he considered it his lucky suit. and so and now of course he's
a little bit further away.
Yeah, now he's in Pennsylvania, so we'll have to see if he's doing graduate work, and we'll have to see. But yeah, so my thing is know your nerd. Listen for small hints that allow you to pick up on maybe things you could find, and then use these websites to
research a little bit. Again,
Yeah.
I highly recommend stalking Facebook.
Yep.
No,
that's true.
Not
That's a great way to know your nerd.
Oh yeah, not in the sense of like trying to figure out where somebody is at any given time, or
no.
Not in a malicious way, but I mean like, I for a long time purely kept my Facebook page just for checking out what was happening with family and friends, and I've recently started over the last couple of years liking other pages, and I get into for things that I would like frequently. I would normally look up and look for frequently. Yeah. Which has led me to some really great, cool finds on Facebook. So, I imagine there's other people who are a lot less private than me in that particular regard, so probably have a very highly cultivated Facebook link. So I mean, like, look, that'd be a great place as well. If you don't fully know your nerds necessarily, that might be a way. That might be something to look at too. Yep. So we're gonna post all of these notes and all of our all the links for all the different websites and places we discussed on our website at thenerdtutorialpodcast.com. And then if you want to follow us as well with the conversation, we're going to post this as well on our Facebook group at facebook.com/nerdtutorialpodcast. Again, all is one big giant word. And then if you have any ideas or future topics, or you want to talk to me on Twitter, you can reach me on Twitter at nerd_tutorial. And we follow all of the previous links that we've had there. So we're following Harry Potter now. Yep. And a couple other stuff that we followed here as well in the past. So any sort of new stuff that ever comes out in there, you can check out our Facebook the Twitter feed and follow that as well if you want to find something on there that's like, yeah, I'm really into Gundams, and you can follow the official Bandai channel which is the people who make Gundam. Yep. Because they're known for their mech shows at the end of the day. But we hope that you guys stay safe out there in these weird times, and we'll see you guys again next time.
Bye.